Today we're going to talk about parallel and perpendicular lines. Our vocabulary for this section is what we're going to go over first. Intersecting lines are lines in a plane that cross at exactly one point and form four angles. If you look right here, we have two lines. One line goes this direction, one line goes this direction, and they cross at the middle point right there. Our next vocabulary word is parallel lines. Parallel lines are lines in a plane that are always the same distance apart. They never intersect. So if you notice these parallel lines here, they go straight and straight. They don't ever cross each other, which is what makes them parallel lines. If you look at the L's in parallel, those would be considered parallel lines because they're always the same distance apart and they never cross each other. Perpendicular lines are lines in a plane that intersect to form four right angles. So if you notice here, we have one right angle, two right angle, three right angle, and four right angles. We could actually draw oh, that did not work the way it was supposed to. We could actually draw a box Anyway, you could actually draw a box around their angles there, and you could see that they're all four right angles and have four sections. On our next slide here, we're going to go more in depth with intersecting lines. Intersecting lines in a plane, once again, are lines in a plane that cross at exactly one point and form four angles. So we're going to look here at this figure that we have right here. Here we have line DC and line BA or AB, which cross at point E. So we're going to write this down as line, I'm going to go with line AB first, and I'm going to do my line symbol. Line symbol is a line with an arrow. Kind of hard with this thing here. So we have line AB and line CD that intersect at point E. So that is how we would write this. We would have our lines. Once again, we always write a line as, when we're talking about a specific line, as a line which has two arrows, an arrow at each end, and then we put the letters of the line. So it would be, once again, A, B for a line. Now, had these not been lines and they were line segments, then I could just put a line, and I could call it A, B. But that's only if it's a segment. That's only if it's a segment. So otherwise, I have to do my line as an arrow to say that I'm talking about a specific line, and those specific letters which then label that line. On our next slide here, we're going to talk about parallel lines. Once again, parallel lines are lines in a plane that are always the same distance apart. They never intersect. Now these lines we like to call enemy lines. They are enemies of each other. And they are enemies because they don't like each other. They never meet each other. So, as you can see here, we could say that our line blue, these ones up here, A, B, and C, D, are parallel to each other. Now I'm going to write that down right here. I'm going to put line, which I have to put my little line signs, A, B, and line C, D are parallel. And our parallel sign looks like an L, or two L's. So as you can see here, we have line AB is parallel to line CD. Over here, once again, we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to label my lines down here. I'm going to go line G, H, and line EF are parallel. So once again, the symbol is kind of like two parallel lines in between the two. So that means they are parallel to each other. And we'll come on over here and we'll do this last one, KL and IJ. So once again, I'm going to do a line. And we're going to say KL. And then we'll do a line. And we'll say IJ. Are parallel by putting two parallel lines in between. So we have line KL and line IJ are parallel. And once again, we refer to these as enemy lines because they don't intercept each other. Our next ones here are perpendicular lines. Perpendicular lines are lines in a plane that intersect to form four right angles. So perpendicular lines form four right angles. So once again, if I took my pen here, I could draw a box here. I could draw a square if my pen would actually work to draw a square, and I would have four right angles. And the way in which we identify these lines is by writing first of all, writing our arrows, which would go over the top. So we have our arrow, and if you notice, this line here that goes up and down here, this vertical line here, is line AB. So I'm going to call this line AB. A, B. And then we're going to have line CD. CD. And then, because these are perpendicular to each other, we're going to put in between these two over here, we're going to put our perpendicular sign. And what our perpendicular sign is it looks like a upside down capital T. And that stands for perpendicular. So upside down capital T stands for perpendicular line. So now we're going to do our other one down here. And once again, I'm going to draw my arrows because we are talking about lines. And this line is going to be called FG. So I'm going to do line FG and line HI are perpendicular. So once again, the perpendicular sign is a upside down T. So it gives us an upside down T there for perpendicular. And that just lets us know they're perpendicular, which means they have, as they cross, they form 4 right angles. On our next slide here, we're going to figure out some exact different, a bunch of different things. So our first thing we're going to do is we're going to find our intersecting lines and the points in which they intersect at. Okay, so our first intersecting lines, I like to call these ones, I didn't kind of cover this before, but I do like to call these ones friends. There we go. Friends. Because our intersecting lines always touch. They're always together. They cross each other. And so, with that, I like to call them friends. And as you can see from our figure down below here, we have 3 intersections in which lines cross. So I have 3 of these listed up here. So our first one says blank and blank intersect at point blank. So let's look here. Let's go ahead and do line E and F here. So we're going to say line. No, that wasn't too good. We're going to do our line E and F. And line E and F here intersect G and H. Line, once again, our line G and H at point. You know, we're looking for the specific point, and it looks like they cross at point I. So we're going to say at point I. Our next one here, going to the very next line we have that crosses or intersects, we're going to say C and D. So line C and D. Once again, it's a line, so we have to do our arrows. It's kind of hard to do arrows with this pen. C and D, and line and our second line here is once again G and H. So we're going to say G and H. Intersect at point. And in this case, they intersect at point J. So at point J. Then we can go down to our next one here. And this one is actually a perpendicular line, but it also is a intersecting line because it still intersects another line. So we're going to say AB, line AB. Intersects line GH. point, we have K there. So at point K. Now those are our friends. Our next one here, we have our parallel lines. Our parallel lines, right, right here, are what we like to call the enemy, right? I'd kind of mentioned that a little bit before, how we called that our enemy. So our parallel lines are the enemy, or enemy lines. They don't ever meet. They never intersect. So our parallel lines here, as we look here, we have two lines here that are parallel. They don't ever intersect each other. So we are going to title them our line EF. So once again, we have to do our line mark. EF and line CD will be parallel to each other. So line CD are parallel to each other. Now if you notice right here, we have line CD and line EF. They will never touch. Even though they're intersecting other lines, these two lines, if you kept going, would never actually cross each other, and they're about the same distance apart. And so because they are parallel, we use our parallel sign over here, which is two parallel lines, which basically is just two L's, or two L's or two I's, depending on the font you're using in between. And then down below here we have our next ones here, our perpendicular lines. So now talking about our perpendicular lines, we are going to have our perpendicular lines. Our perpendicular lines, in this case, we have AB, so we have line A, B, and we have line, GH, which cross and form four 90-degree angles. One's completely vertical, one's completely horizontal. They form completely vertical, or four complete right angles. So we are going to label that one GH. Line GH are perpendicular. Now, some people like to refer to these ones as married lines. So we have friends, we have enemy, and we have married. That was a horrible D. We have married lines because they form a perfect right angles. I don't know. And that is how we have our different lines and how we can remember these different lines. And our perpendicular lines, our parallel lines, and our intersecting lines.